Good afternoon, this is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding. We get a lot of questions about non-willfulness. A lot of taxpayers get lost on their research journey online, a lot of rabbit holes to get stuck in, a lot of bad information, misinformation, fear-mongering, scaremongering, etc., etc. As we're heading into tax season, people may be considering offshore disclosure, filing late FBAR, etc., etc., so we wanted to provide a little bit of guidance. First, who is a U.S. person for reporting? Well, it's going to be, for individuals, it's going to be U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, foreign nationals who meet the substantial presence test. You may not be on a visa. You may be on one of any different types of visa: work visa, H-1B, L-1, investment visa, EB-5, B-1, B-2, tourist visa, etc., etc. Currently, the IRS will say you have to file it no matter what. There is a case out there right now, ROS Day, which basically says that if you live overseas and you qualify for a treaty, you qualify under a treaty to elect to be treated as a foreign person so that you're not taxed as a U.S. person, you're taxed as a non-resident, then you don't have to file the FBAR. The IRS would disagree, but that's up for debate. But currently, right now, the way the IRS sees it, those three categories of individuals have to file. So you didn't file your FBAR, right? You wake up one day and you go, oh, man, was I supposed to file that? What's my CPA talking about? What are these guys at work saying? What is an FBAR? How is it different than FinCEN? But I thought I did FATCA, et cetera, et cetera. So let's assume that the FBAR was not filed, okay? In order to qualify for programs such as the Delinquency Procedures or the Streamlined Procedures, you have to be non-willful. Unfortunately, there is no bright line test, for example, A to B to C to D, that will tell you whether you are non-willful or not. It's based on the totality of the circumstances. You would look at the facts. You would look at the Internal Revenue Manual. You look at the recent cases, publications out there from the IRS, things of that nature. You kind of put it all in a pot. You mix it all up. You look at your circumstances and then determine if you think you're non-willful or not. Now, it's not like you do it and you can ask the IRS, am I non-willful or not? You would submit under the non-willful program or procedures, and only if you're rejected would you know that you don't qualify. Most of the time, people are going to be non-willful, okay? In order to be willful, typically it has to be intentional or with willful blindness or reckless disregard. These are strong words. These are not, Joe or Jane moved to the United States a year ago. They didn't know they had the foreign accounts. The H&R Block gal didn't tell them they need to file. They didn't understand TurboTax because they had less than 100,000. So they didn't think they had to do the FBAR because they'd never heard of it and the form is not available in the program, etc., etc. So just because you learn after the fact that you should have filed, that doesn't mean that you go back and assume that you're willful. You still have to look at all the facts, okay? You have to see if there's facts sufficient to justify why you didn't file, why you didn't know about it, things of that nature. So let's talk about some of the common fear-mongering that we find. For example, someone will come to us and go, oh, I filed FBAR and then I didn't file it again, and the tax attorney I spoke to said I automatically am willful and that I have to do VDP. Well, that's not true, right? Let's say you came to the United States and you filed because maybe you had an equalization, right? And so you go to one of these firms, your employer sends you to one of the big four and they do your returns and they do the FBAR, but no one ever tells you have to keep filing it. And then you learn a few years later, like, oh, I thought that was just a one-time thing I do when I get here, but I actually have to keep filing it every year. Well, that's not necessarily going to be willful, right? When you came here, you were told you had to do it, so you did it. And then after the fact, you learned you were supposed to, but you hadn't. That doesn't mean you're willful, okay? You'd be surprised at how many attorneys will tell you that you're automatically willful, that there's no wiggle room or anything like that. Another common example is bank accounts versus other accounts. So let's say, for example, you come to the United States and you've got $100,000 in bank accounts and $400,000 in foreign pension. So you file the FBAR. And then you drain that account, you transfer it here to put a down payment on a home. So now you have $6,000 of money in a foreign bank account and you have a pension. But from all the reading that you found, you thought you only have to do the FBAR for bank accounts. Oftentimes, people think they just have to do it for bank accounts. That's a legitimate thought. So then you realize after the fact that, oh, I was supposed to file the FBAR. So you didn't file it for a few years. Does that make you willful even though you've got close to $500,000 in foreign pension? No, probably not. Why? Because no one told you and you misunderstood. If you did it intentionally, right? Or there was like willful blindness, things like that, like there was a book right in front of you that told you, read this and you'll know the answer and you didn't read it, well, that's going to be different. Or your CPA calls, hey, let's talk specifically about this issue and you don't talk, that's different too. But, it could be an honest mistake. And then another one we get is living in the United States and living abroad. A lot of people think when they live overseas that they're not required to file the FBAR, because sometimes there's a misunderstanding as to what's considered a U.S. person for reporting versus what's a U.S. person for tax purposes. Maybe they made a treaty election not even thinking about the case. The point I'm getting at is you have to look at your overall situation. Your facts may be similar to someone else's situation. That does not mean that it is identical. And just because one person may deem themselves willful doesn't mean that you're necessarily willful too, right? You can easily be non-willful if your facts justify it. We've got a lot of information about this stuff on our website, goldinglawyers.com. We got a bunch of sub-websites where you can find information as well. My name is Sean Golding. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.